Hey everybody, welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and in this video I want to talk a little bit more about 3D printing. The two most popular types of 3D printing methods that you can do right now inside of your home. And to help you make a decision about that, I want you to take a look at the figures that are right there on the table in front of me. And I want you to spot the difference between them. You know what they are. Now, if you're thinking that it's the color, well, yeah, it is the color, but fun fact, all of these are considered gray from their manufacturers, just a little bit different tint of gray. But that's not the biggest difference. The biggest difference is how these figures were printed. Some of them were printed with resin, and then some others were printed with filament. And here are the ones that are printed with resin. This Batman bust here, all the way to this wizard right there, was printed with resin. And then all the other figures from here and Deadpool were printed using filament from a PLA printer. Now, those are the biggest differences between these two. And in this video, I want to help you to try to decide which printing method will be right for you in your particular situation based on my experiences that I've had with these printers so far. So let me tell you about the printers that I have. They're beginner level printers, by the way, and how much they cost. First, for the Resin 3D prints, I got the Anycubic Photon Mono 4K, $150 from Micro Center, and it was on sale. Regular price, $199. For the filament PLA printer, it's an oldie but a goodie, one that a lot of people start off with, the Creality Ender Pro 3. Also from Micro Center, but only paid $100 for it because they have a very common coupon for new customers to take $100 off the cost of that printer. So I took advantage of that and I was only spending $100 for it. So, and the normal price on that is $200 as well. So if we just look at the regular retail price, then those prices are very, very comparable. So right out the gate, you're not going to be spending too much more for one over the other. But since we're talking about the price of how much it costs to really get started, we also have to think about the different types of accessories that you're going to need for each particular type of printer. First, the printing medium. So when you're printing with resin, you need to buy bottles of resin. Now, they're going to cost different depending on the type of resin that you're using. Of course, different brands are going to cost differently, but also the type of resin that you're going to be using can influence the price as well. But for a regular standard beginner, I'm assuming that you want to use regular resin. So for basic resin, that's going to be either black, white, or gray. Typically, you're going to find yourself spending at or around $20 for one 1,000 milliliter bottle. Now, you can go a little bit over 20 or you can go a little under 20 if you're able to find something on sale. I've used Anycubic's basic gray resin. I've used Micro Center's inland branded resin. And then I've also used another type of resin from Ceratec, I think that's the name of the company, their eco resin, and those all cost me in the ballpark of between $18 to $21. So that's how much it typically costs for beginning resin. Now, when it comes to filament for the PLA printers, again, if you find it on sale, the prices can be a little bit lower. If you want something that's very specific, have different qualities, it can cost more. But typically also around the $20 mark. What I used for this was Micro Center's Inland brand. Again, it was their PLA Plus resin, and I paid a little over $20, or filament rather, the PLA Plus filament, and paid a little over $20 for it, right? Like $21 or $22. And it's a very nice gray color, and I really do like it. So as far as the printing medium goes, the prices very, very comparable. But what's not so comparable are the little things that you're going to find yourself getting depending on which type of printer that you choose. Now, if you're going to talk about resin, once you buy the printer and then once you buy the resin, that is not the end of the story. because in order to do it safely, you're going to need more than what's included in the box. And that's where those little extra costs start to add up. For example, if you're just using the basic resin, which all resin is poisonous, by the way, and you definitely should use gloves, then you're going to need to clean that resin. And generally, the recommended way to clean it is by using isopropyl alcohol. And it is generally recommended that you use between 91 to 99% isopropyl alcohol. And you can go into Walmart or someplace and get yourself a bottle that's probably about, maybe about that big. And that's going to cost you like $4 each. Or you can go somewhere like Ace Hardware and you can buy like a whole bunch of it for, again, a little over $20. But you are going to need that in order to clean the resin. What you're also going to need are gloves, and not just any gloves. You're going to need some nitrile gloves, disposable gloves, because every time that you use that printer, every time you interact with that resin, you need to be wearing gloves. And you'll go through a lot of it. So many gloves you might start to feel bad that it's so wasteful, but that is something that comes with the territory. Now, I do recommend if you have a Harbor Freight near you that you go there so that you can get 100 gloves, nitrile gloves, for $10, and is really the cheapest that I've seen those gloves for. So now we're talking about the alcohol that you have to get, and then we're talking about the gloves that you have to get, some other personal protective equipment that's really recommended that you have, goggles if you don't have goggles, and even a respirator so it doesn't, those fumes don't get to you and start to, affect you in some kind of a way. Those are all added costs before you really even print off your very first piece. And those things add up, and we're not done, because you'll also find yourself making a trip or two to the dollar store to get some smaller but still necessary things in order to make the job a little bit easier. I'm talking about buckets with lids on them, a little garbage can, some tongs, paper towels, those kind of things, just to make your life a little bit easier when you're working with resin. So all those different things start to add up as far as that upfront cost goes when you're talking about resin. But when you're talking about the filament, everything that comes in that box, at least with the Ender Pro 3, is really all that you need. You don't have to use any personal protective equipment. You don't need gloves. You don't need goggles. You don't need anything to clean it with. You don't need special containers. You don't need any of that. So you pay for the printer. It comes with a little bit of filament to get you started. But if you buy a bigger spool of filament, it's really all that you need out the box. And if you want to spend a little extra money, there's a slew of different upgrades that you can use for that particular printer to make it better or to make it work the way that you want it to work. But at least starting out is not necessary for you to do that. So the upfront cost is going to be a lot cheaper when it comes to doing the filament based stuff compared to resin 3D based printing. So you save some money up front when it comes to the filament stuff. But now let's talk about the actual setup process of the machine. Now let me tell you, hands down, if you value your time and if you think that spending a little bit of extra money is worth it to save you time in the long run, then by all means, resin, resin, resin. Now the Anycubic Photon Mono 4K was really easy to set up. And I'm pretty sure that some other resin-based 3D printers that are similar to the shape and the size of that model operate in the exact same way. Once you take it out the box, really the only thing that you have to do, you take the build plate, you put it on the machine, you twist the little knob to get it tight. You plug it in, and then you have to level it. And doing that just requires to go into a very basic setting on the computer. They give you instructions on what buttons to press. The little plate goes down, and once it stops, you put a little bit of pressure on it, tighten those 4 screws that are in it with the little Allen key that they give you, and then you send it right back up. You pour the resin into the little vat, slide it in place, twist it tight with the little screws, and you're pretty much done. You can just pop the USB stick in there and start printing immediately. And it's very easy to set up, very easy to use. You can get it done in seriously like 15 minutes, if that. But on the other hand, this printer, the Ender 3 Pro, it can be a bit of a doozy. This thing comes about 60% assembled and you have to do the rest yourself. And the instructions that they include in the box are not good instructions, especially if you have no idea what you're doing, if you've never put together a 3D printer before, if you're just brand new to everything. You are going to need to watch a YouTube video or maybe even 2 YouTube videos like I did in order to set it up correctly. Those instructions, they don't even have words on them. It just shows you pictures. And it took me 3 hours to put it together because I got hung up on a couple of parts as far as orientation goes, and I wasn't sure, like, is this the way it's supposed to go? It's supposed to go this way, it's supposed to go that way. And then I had some other little trouble with the long Z-axis screw for some reason not going into the hole that it was supposed to go into. And it's little things like that that when something goes wrong, the instructions do not tell you. This is how you troubleshoot it. These machines were set up for people who like to tinker, or at least they don't mind tinkering. People who run into problems and they go, well, this is something I need to solve and I am going to figure it out, darn it. People who like to engage with a big community of people that also have a lot of really weird problems that you typically don't hear about, and then they come up with solutions to fix it. That is what printing with this printer is going to be like. There's fiddling involved, there's trial and error involved, and if you don't like doing that kind of stuff, or if that intimidates you, then you might want to think about going in another direction. But don't let me put you off, because once you get everything assembled and you get the bed leveled, and again, you have to look at different YouTube videos, you have to educate yourself so you can know about these things going in, because if you don't, you're just going to get failed print after failed print after failed print, and then I think that will be more discouraging than anything. So me telling you ahead of time, I hope is going to help you to avoid a lot of frustration in the future. And you know, the other crazy thing about printing with filament, especially in this particular model, the instructions don't even tell you how to put the filament in. They don't tell you how to load it. And see, and that's what I'm talking about. They're assuming that you're already tapped into this kind of thing, that the medium that you use in order to make the prints, they don't even tell you how to do it. They don't tell you that you can't just take the end of the filament and stick it into the hole. It doesn't work that way, because you have to take a little pair of snippers and cut it like at a 45-degree angle so that it makes a point, and then you can squeeze it through to where it needs to go. And those are the little things that the instructions just don't tell you. So if you're going to get a filament print, at least this type of filament printer, then make sure that you watch videos, go on subreddits, so you can know what to do as a beginner starting out. It will save you frustration in the long run, I promise. So we've gone through all that stuff. We've set everything up, and now we're ready to print. What is the printing process like? Well, if you like to look at the progress of your prints as they go on, then filament is going to be definitely the way to go. Resin for those beginning parts are deep inside of that pool, and you're not going to see what is going to come out until that plate has risen to a certain level. Now you can pause it and it'll lift up a little bit more so that you can see what's going on under it, but I personally don't like to pause the prints because I don't want it to start off in a slightly different position than it was when it stopped and then end up ruining the whole thing. So if you are going to have a print and it fails early on, you're not going to know it when you're dealing with resin. You're going to have to wait until you can see it. But when it comes to the filament stuff, if something goes wrong for like that base layer, the first set of lines that it lays down, if it comes off the bed or if it's not going down on the plate and staying there for whatever reason, you can immediately cancel it, and then you can rip that filament off really easily, do whatever adjustments you need to do, and then try it again. But with resin, when something fails, you need to empty that vat, use another pair of gloves, you need to take the cured resin off of the little plastic FEP screen, make sure that's out of the way, strain the resin that you poured out, and then pour that resin back in, and then you can try again. So it's a process with a failed print when it comes to the resin. And if it doesn't fail, then of course you got to go through the whole process of cleaning and curing it. And then I'll also leave a card up here so that you can check out that video, the whole process in a first person view of what the cleaning and curing process is like with this particular printer, and really any resin printer that you're going to be dealing with. But I do have to say, it is a lot more fun, a lot more enjoyable watching a filament-based printer do its thing. Watching that nozzle zip all across that build plate, watching things build up in real time. You can just sit there and just watch it. And it's really something amazing to see. And I really do enjoy that about it. And like I said, if something goes wrong, you can easily just stop, take it off, and then try it again. And that's like the beauty of it. It doesn't take a lot of time to go back in if something goes wrong. As far as the printing time goes, it's going to depend on what you're doing. You can have really long prints with both of these, but I did print some miniatures on both of these. And I have to say that on the Creality Ender 3 Pro, printing one of these miniatures only took about 45 minutes, which was a lot faster than I thought it was going to be. On the flip side, printing one of these in resin took a couple of hours. And the biggest difference between those two, I think, is because with the resin, it has to go up and down and up and down. But since they're so small and they occupy a really small circle, the filament-based printer was able to just stay really, really tight and just do like this all the time. It didn't have to move across the bed. So it was pretty much in one spot the whole time, and that really sped up the process. But when I tried to print 3 figures at the same time, then the time went up to be very similar to that of the resin printer, where it took over 2 hours to do. But the fun thing about resin is you can print multiple things on the same plate, and they're all printing at exactly the same time. As they go down, they each gain a layer as they come back up. But when it comes to the filament printer, if there's only one nozzle, there's only one extruder, so it tries to jump in between the different builds so that it can optimize its time, but you can change it in the settings so that it will only finish one thing at a time. Just in case something fails, you don't have to scrap the whole project. So I decided to just let the 3 go simultaneously. Unfortunately, it worked out, but to be on the safe side, I do recommend that you just let one go at a time, just so you don't have to start over if things don't go well. The print quality. Now, a lot of people say that with resin, you are going to get a lot more detailed prints than you can with a filament-based printer. And in some cases, that is definitely true, but do not think that the quality is going to be absolutely horribly inferior when it comes to the comparison between PLA and resin-based printing. I mean, just look at this Deadpool. This Deadpool has such great detail in it. So well defined. Now, maybe it's the model, maybe it's how Eastman made it, but it is really, really good looking. And then when we look at Batman here, Batman also looks good, but in my opinion, he doesn't look dramatically better than the Deadpool. I wouldn't even say that he looks better than Deadpool at all. Maybe it has something to do with the color, the lighter gray, hides a little bit more detail. I don't know. Maybe it's the filament and the way the filament is made. Maybe it's making the details pop. But this guy looks really, really good printed in filament. And these little minifigures look pretty good as well too. Now, I did notice some differences. For example, the hands of the wizard, I can see with the resin, I can see that his fingers are clearly spread apart. But with the filament, the hands look a little bit binded together, like there's no space in between the figures. And those are the little tiny parts of the detail that you will notice. And then the resin prints are also smoother. You can see that there is some line work here with the filament-based printer. It's not really super noticeable, but you can see it a little bit and you can feel it a little bit. And just printing with resin just makes overall, it's just smoother, more real to life, more statuesque, if you will. But from these figures, I would say that the quality is still quite good. I really do enjoy it. And then some other household things that I've printed on it, I think that they've come out looking just fine. And I've also been able to get more variety out of the things that I printed. Like I said, I printed household things with the Ender Pro 3, things that are flexible, things that are articulated right off the bed that I wouldn't be able to do using standard resin with the Resin 3D printer. So if you just want to use it for things other than figures or in addition to figures, then you'll have more flexibility right off the bat using a standard filament-based printer as opposed to the resin. So I know that was a whole lot of talking, but I think that it was totally necessary to help you try to make a decision on which type of 3D printer is best for you. But also one last thing to know, if space is an issue for you, if you live in a small apartment, if you only occupy a very small room, then the Resin 3D printer, it could be hazardous to you. It needs some space to ventilate. The resin does give off fumes. It's not good to just constantly breathe that stuff in. So if you don't have a proper way to ventilate it, if you don't have a large enough space, then I would definitely shy away from resin, even if it seems like the more attractive option for you, just for a health perspective. You can get away with using a filament-based printer in small spaces because you won't have to worry about the smell. Now, this is louder than a Resin 3D printer. It's got fans, and there's a lot of, computer noises going on, but you will be able to not get sick from it, at least not as easily as you can. So you don't want to be contaminating your space, especially if you live in a really small space. So if that's an issue for you, then you should definitely go the filament route as opposed to the resin. But if you're fortunate enough to just have a nice wide open space and you can choose any or, then I hope that you can take some of the things that I share with you today based on my experience to make an informed decision and then move up to bigger and better machines that don't require so much hands-on fiddling and maintenance. So thank you everybody for checking out this video from Figure Feedback. Let me know whether or not you are into 3D printing in the comments and whether or not you want to get into it in the future. And I'll definitely be back in the future myself with some more awesome videos for you. So until next time, take care of yourselves and I'll see you next time.